The headphone amp deck that I'm going to review today is definitely one thing not anymore fresh, because I think it was released at roughly something like 2011, but on the other hand, very good audio hardware ages really well. So let's see if that's the case today here with the Cambridge Audio DacMagic Plus. It is available in silver, as you can see here, but also in black, starting with prices in the US at roughly $350 or 380 euros. You actually first, when you get it, have the choice if you want to use it in desktop mode with those rubber feet, or if you want to use the stand and use it upright like this. So that's your choice. At first I actually wanted to complain about the feet, because when I put them on the first time there was actually quite some noticeable wiggle, but I guess with time those got flat, or maybe it was the glue, so nothing to complain here about anymore, and never anything else about, like for example the top. Yes, this feels hollow because there is not much inside, but that is fine, and in terms of build quality there's no creaking and everything feels solid. Good weight, very well executed here with this very nice and thick aluminum plate. All has been done well. Now the volume wheel is plastic, but it gets the job done. This is nothing, that's just the kind of typical trademark of Cambridge Audio. And once we get to the back, we can already see one thing: a lot of ports here with unbalanced output, balanced outputs, also digital outputs, and 2x coax and optical inputs, along with USB audio, external device, and DC in. This is plenty. Now on the top, what I like here is that we have an on and off switch, easily accessible from the front. Many headphone amp that I tried had it on the back, which is just less convenient. You can also easily switch through the sources, the volume wheel as I said though, but as you can already see, it has no end point, and I'm gonna go to that, why I'm not a fan of that later on. Also filter phase change, you have 3 available with linear, minimal, and steep. Also a little bit more about that later. And then incoming sampling rate, and this also has an upscaler along with the 6.35mm jack. So there's not really much else to tell about this. Now if you want to use it at full capacity on your PC, for example, you need to install a driver, but that one is easily accessible. It's just an exe file, and that's pretty much it. So let's talk about the first thing that I have to complain about. That's the control with this volume knob, because since it has no kind of end point, this means just that it works different like most others. So once you actually turn it on every time, I think the volume defaults at 50%. So if you maybe set it to 70 and then turn it off, the next time it's at 50 again, which is super annoying. So at the end, what I decided to do, so I have always the same volume that I want to have with my music. I set it on Windows, for example, at the volume that I wanted to, and every time I turn this on, I just crank up the volume at 100%, which is not the ideal solution, but that's the best way to get around, so I don't have to always fiddle around which is the volume that I usually want. So I don't get this whole behavior, especially since it's not just like one rotation for a full volume from 50 to 100. It feels like you have to kind of like turn around like for 2 or 3 seconds. So it's weird, it's annoying. And the next thing, this is also a little bit on the weaker side already, but we are getting to the good side a little bit later on, is the volume itself, because it doesn't have all that much power. For example, an E4C flow, I would have already limited out. I was at 100% on the PC and on the headphone amp deck, and it wasn't loud enough for me. I wanted a little bit more. But on the other hand, most other headphones that I've tried, for example, an LCD2C or an Sennheiser 650, 600, or all those, you can drive. I mean, I didn't have all that much reserves anymore. I was at roughly 80%. Most people will be more like 60, 70, since I listen way too loud. But when I listen to, for example, games which have a little bit of a general lower volume, I was at already 90 and getting very close to that. So I know I listen louder than most people and I have less reserves, but I still have to say, in most cases, it would be enough. But since personally I'm looking for a headphone amp deck that gives me more than enough reserves for everything so I can review those, this would have been a little bit limiting, and that's why I switched over to the Audio GD NFP1128 that has a lot more power, because when I'm here maxed out on the other one, I'm at roughly like 60%. But now let's get to the actual sound qualities. Obviously, you have the upscaler, and why not just use it? It's easy to install, and it will, even though maybe not significantly improve the sound, but at least you have a good state of mind knowing you get the best possible out of there, and I liked it. Now about the phases, I have to say linear is the most neutral one that I would personally use for everything else. Now you can, with the other settings, slightly adjust it to your preference or to your headphones. For example, the minimal mode, which is the middle one, for me tends to kind of filter highs a little bit more and kind of boost the mids just a tad little bit, and also the soundstage got a little bit more closer, even though I've seen people talking about that the soundstage gets wider and imaging gets better. For me it was a little bit different, so that's definitely something that you have to check with your music, with your headphone, and the way you like it, but that's roughly what I would say. So a little bit more filtered actually in terms of highs, so a little bit maybe better if you have very kind of sibilant headphones that are a little bit harsh. You can filter it out with that. Now the other setting, which would be the steep one, that is actually one that works very well, for example, with my LTD2C, which I personally think are a little bit too dark or almost kind of too soft in terms of highs. Then you could boost those a little bit. I mean, all of these filters, these three, have minimal differences, and it always depends on your headphone how much of a difference it actually makes, but still it is noticeable if you listen to that. And for example, it actually did noticeably improve my listening behavior on the LTD2C, so that's about that. Now the actual quality, I have to say, especially in the normal linear mode, is very nice and neutral, and I'm going to say neutral comparing to, for example, my Audio GD, which I would call personally a little bit bright. So some people told me they think the Audio GD is neutral, and then this one would be a little bit kind of laid back or a little bit reserved, but I would actually think this to me sounds a little bit more neutral, a little bit more linear than the Audio GD is with my settings, where it's a little bit brighter, with the jumpers that I set, which is the way I wanted it to have. So it's a very nice all-round balanced sound. So I think pretty much every headphone you will drive very nice and linear with that, with enough power. And what it still has is, it's absolutely due to the DAC, a very nice resolution. You get all the details. To me personally, since I, with the LTD2C, don't quite get all the highs, not the sparkle with the Audio GD, switch to the with the Cambridge Audio, I switched to the Audio GD just to get that sparkle, which I wouldn't say that is missing on this one here, but if you have a headphone that just has those already, you're super fine with that. If you have, for example, though, a headphone that already has a little bit softer or kind of laid back highs, then you definitely at least need the steep filter, or maybe you just won't quite get the highest resolution in terms of the upper end. But for normal headphones, like for example the Sennheiser HD600, the 650s, or the Biodynamics, it was really nice and balanced. And the thing was that nothing felt out of balance. For example, there was not too much bass, or there was never too many highs or too little. It felt really well done with a good kind of spectrum. The imaging was nice, the resolution, everything has a nice depth and so on. So I definitely like the DAC a lot more than I don't like the bad stuff. So to cover good and bad once again. On the bad side, the one thing that I don't like at all is the way the volume knob works. Now, the limited power output for volume is something that I could live with in, like, say, let's say 90%, because only the E4C flow is the one that I couldn't drive loud enough for me. But on the good side, you have a lot of ports. You get the easy accessible switch, you get an upscaler, you get a really good DAC with easily accessible filters, so you don't have to use jumpers or anything like that. So it covers it well. And this for roughly $350 definitely is nice. Obviously, it's not the newest one anymore, but since they didn't see the need to actually upgrade this, and this is still absolutely doing a good job, I can still recommend it. Now, obviously, my first choice would be to recommend you the Audio GD. That's why I have it, and that's why it's the easiest one to recommend. But that one you have to import. And I haven't really checked any other alternatives yet at this price range. So as far as it seems, I can definitely tell you that I like it a lot, but I personally wouldn't get it for me as a reviewer. If I wouldn't have had any higher end ones already, and I wouldn't know what there is still left off in terms of reserves and just a little bit more clarity and resolution and so on, I would never have an issue with that. So even though I may be not impressed, I'm fully satisfied. Okay, that's it. Until next time, bye.